It is time.
It's time!
Yeah. Oh, that did not work. One more time, folks. Здравствуйте, right? Здравствуйте. Hello, welcome to the blank space. And yes, that's the intro.
Hello!
Say-
Oh my god. That was
we
just
are
too
we are
good.
greeting you in the best language of all time. That is possibly Cyrillic, and maybe for special reasons.
Yes. I just imagine somebody who speaks that language, or somebody who at least knows of it, just listens to that and they're like, he just made a noise with his mouth. I don't think that's actually anything. I don't think he said anything.
Again, it's up to you to figure out what language it was, because I don't know anymore.
Surprise, surprise. It's
They
not a
did
real
not put-
language.
That would be a surprise. I put quasi effort into my ramblings, Drew.
Quasi effort.
It's like effort, but like not.
It's like not trying, but at the same time,
Sort of giving a crap.
sort of giving it like half of a college, like not the good old college try. It's like you
Community college try.
you woke up like hungover for your 11 p.m. like 11 a.m. class,
Okay.
and you went and you just kind of stared at the teacher the entire time. You didn't write any notes or do anything. You just sat there. And at the end, the teacher was like, "All right, time to go," and then you just fell asleep on your desk. That's basically the effort that you're describing.
You know what? I'm okay with that. I know what I am, and that's what I do.
Okay.
So, Drew, you do anything fun this week?
I did, but before we get to any of that, quick
Okay.
note.
Okay.
So last podcast we talked about the Trump budget, and we basically were going to talk about the healthcare bill that had basically dropped. I think it was either the same day or a few days beforehand. And
Yeah.
it's
And it's already dead.
it's dead. It's dead now. It's just
Yeah.
straight dead. So
We you know what the sad thing is? We were actually preparing with real effort, too.
we had done a little bit of research. I had listened to like a couple of podcasts. I'd listened to basically a bunch of stuff about it, ready to talk about it. Even after it was already dead, we were putting in that quasi effort. And well, it's dead, so
Yeah.
no use talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, we were going to pretty much, like, railroad against it, but...
It actually brings up an interesting point, though. One
What's
quick thing. This won't be a long topic, but
Okay.
so I was listening more about the Trump budget that
Okay.
he put out. And that is not like an official budget as far as I can tell. That's not like, this is what we're doing. This is more like a wish list. This is like what we might do.
Well, yeah. You know what? We probably didn't make that clear enough in the last episode.
Yeah, I guess maybe, but at the same time, I didn't fully understand that. I thought that was like, this is the game plan, we're going forward with it.
No. So what it was, right, is it's the draft version, right? But the fact is, their draft version is, quite frankly, a fourth grade level. And we're in college now, and you should be doing better than this. That's essentially the problem. I mean, like, the budget can be completely changed by the time it's passed. But I'm just saying, right, like, but the ideas that were being put forward with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's last episode, folks.
Yeah. Long story short, we talked at length about a thing that might not even happen. But I feel like that's just generally news in general. It's like, let's talk about things that might happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, it's still important to talk about, though, because you can still contact your representative, your state representative, be like, hey, I don't like this, and that could possibly get you somewhere. I mean, at least if enough people do it.
Definitely.
Okay. But, yeah. We got that out of the way. Did you
So
want to talk at all about the bill? I mean, the healthcare bill, or not?
not. I mean, if it's dead, there's a good chance they'll go back and revise and figure out what was wrong. Like similar to the travel ban that they keep trying to
Mm-hmm.
rework, they will just continue at it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was so vastly unpopular, I don't think we'll see it for a little while. Like the travel ban. The travel ban we didn't see for a couple of months, and then
Mm-hmm.
it came back around. So I think it's not like, oh, tomorrow the new healthcare bill is going to come out. It's going to be like, well, maybe like May, late April, we'll see like another draft of it.
All right, we'll do when it comes back around. We'll do an in-depth review of why it may or may not be a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's the way I see it. Is we could talk about it, but we would just basically be kicking a dead horse. So
I do like kicking dead horses sometimes. You ever just go out to a ranch and just never mind. Anyway,
I mean, I'm not gonna
there's
lie. I've never seen a dead horse. Have you, Ant? Is there a reason why you've seen a dead horse?
actually no. I was trying to be funny and it didn't work.
There's that quasi effort again. Quasi humorous effort.
Yep,
But
I'm
but
on all three cylinders.
but I have something that I want to talk about because
Okay,
you did something.
this is true. So actually, over the last week, I've gone head first into the Metro series of games.
Hmm.
And for those of you that don't know, Drew, do you want to give a quick explanation of what it is?
Yeah. So the idea behind the Metro games is basically a post-apocalypse, but set in a universe we don't see very often. Most of the time when we see post-apocalypse, in game form at least, most of the time it's set in the U.S. or it's set around some kind of like, oh, we're just making ends meet on the surface. Like we're just basically trying to make basically like a Fallout kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
While Metro takes a completely different idea of it, where basically they say it was so bad we can't even be on the surface. We live in the subway. We live in the subway tunnels underneath of Russia, where it's set.
Well, Moscow itself, actually.
Moscow specifically, but set in
Mm-hmm.
Russia. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very like scrape by kind of situation where I would argue something like Fallout is you scrape by in some instances, but eventually it turns into like a power trip of like, oh, I have these crazy nuclear weapons and these crazy energy weapons and I'm going to blow everything up. While Metro is more like, no, there's a lot out there that's going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You are not the dangerous one here. Um, it's more of like a character based, story based kind of apocalypse game.
Mm-hmm. It's a role playing game where you're just playing the role of an actual character, not like a custom, go be free. No, it's a play this dude and be a little sad.
Yeah. So real quick before we get into your thoughts about
Mm-hmm.
both games, Metro
Okay.
2033 and Metro Last Light, what sparked you to play them? What actually like got you like wanting to play them?
So actually, oddly enough, I was reading this Russian novel, right? And I was like, you know what? I haven't really played, I haven't really like touched in any Russian stuff in a while. I was like, you know what? I really, really wanted to play the Metro series before, and I bought it on Steam, like really cheap, and I just never bothered to play it. I
Hmm.
was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this.
Hmm. It it's funny to me that you were like, I want to play a Russia game. Not like a
Yeah,
specific genre. It was just like, let's do a Russian game. Let's play a game set in like the heartland of Russia.
yeah, Slavistan can only keep you occupied for so many hours.
Hmm. But so more or less, you wanted to play like a game sort of like this, and you had picked it up a while ago, wanted to play it, so it
Mm.
finally came around.
Yeah, basically, it's like the little list you have, except except it's not written down.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yep,
but
that was the story. It was a good story.
solid story. Thank you very much for sharing. So, all
Hmm.
right. So, I guess let's go game by game then. The first
Hmm.
one. So, Metro 2033. What did you think about that game?
I actually really enjoyed just like how it threw you through the story, right? And it did something that no other game had done to me before, actually. It made me fear enemies out of mechanics.
Hmm.
See? That was something that I had never had before. Like, there's this one monster that I kept fighting. It was called a librarian, right?
Hmm.
And it was hard to fight and beat, but I could beat it, right? So, like, the first time I go against this thing, right? It takes a little bit, but I get it down, right? Second one I get through, all right, cool. It was a little hard, but I got him down. Third one, that's fine. Fourth one, okay, there's a fourth one now. All right, I can do this still, right? And then there's a fifth one, right? It's like, okay, how many more of these am I going to face? And then there's a sixth one. It's like, oh god, I'm running out of ammo.
Yeah, that, and not to derail a little bit, but that is something I enjoy immensely about both games. Is ammo is literally money to you. It is so rare that you will use it as money in the game.
Hmm.
And bullets themselves are rare and hard to come by unless you really are scouring every inch of a level. So
I may be a bit of a loot whore and scoured every inch of the level.
I'm the same way, but I definitely playing through the games, I can see where if somebody really wasn't looking, they could miss something entirely.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
But back
But
back back to the enemies. Yeah, the librarian itself is usually relatively terrifying, but I would extend that to all of the monsters and ghoulies in
mhm.
the Metro universe.
So yeah, like this librarian thing is like this hulking gorilla-like monster that you have to try and dodge and get away from, right, or destroy it somehow. And one by itself is a bit of a challenge, but it's doable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, the issue is not just like the one by itself, but it's realizing, wait, there's going to be many, many more of these. Like it got to a point where it's like I realized I can't keep killing each and every one, otherwise I'm going to end up having no ammunition, and I'm just going to get murdered.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
And that is something I found very interesting, where it basically taught me, the game taught me to fear this enemy, that it's not just something you can keep taking on.
mm-hmm.
Where for the most part, a lot of the enemies you can, right? Like I'd say most of the enemies are very, very destroyable on their own, right? But the ways that the enemies go after you makes you want to experiment with different weapons, try and do different tactics, realize what is this double barrel shotgun going to be worth me fighting these with, or am I better off trying to shoot it with an assault rifle? Do I have to use my military grade ammunition to really put this thing down? Or, you know, it just kind of comes out as a game that forces you to adapt to all its monsters. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that about it.
Yeah, it teaches you different tactics for all enemies. Obviously, the human enemies all act relatively the same, whether you're fighting the commies or the Nazis
Mm-hmm.
or just scavengers. They're all gonna act the same. But when you really get to the monsters of Metro, they all act somewhat differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially when we get to Last Light. Last Light has some really interesting stuff, but we'll save that
Mm-hmm.
for now. Um, so how did you feel about the story or like the bigger like what's it called like
The ending, or like how it all comes together. Or...
yeah like the ending and the what's it called some of the bigger moments of the game.
I feel like the game tells a story really nicely, right?
Hmm.
It picks up and ends where it should, right? Like you don't feel like the game goes on too long, but it's also not too short, right? I mean, like I definitely wish there was much more of this, right? But I feel like if it did go on longer, it would kind of overstay its welcome,
Okay, I could see
right?
that. And
Like I feel like it was a good length for what it was.
Right. It certainly stayed as long as it needed to. I felt kind of the same way. Well, towards the end, I was like, that felt like a good length. It didn't feel it. I could definitely see like if it went on another hour, it might have felt like it was stretching its idea.
Hmm. I mean, I definitely like to play around in that sort of world more, though, right? Like in sort of like free roam mode or something like that. But for it being as the story as it is, as it's just the game's just putting you through the story as it is.
Hmm.
I feel like it was good. Like it was fine on how it went. I mean, like of course they could have added more things in, but I don't really feel like it needed it though. That's the thing. Like it
Yeah.
was nice, contained, and it didn't overstay its welcome, which is a good thing. Because too many games try and put, at least these days, try and make these huge open-ended kind of things when really just a more concise story would get more across. You know? Okay. Yeah. So let's do a little brief overview of this world a bit more because I feel like we've alienated a few people that don't know what's going
Hmm.
on. So along with this being in the subways and such like that, that's basically where all the people have eked out their existence, right? The subways were shielded from the radiation since
Hmm.
they're deep underground, they're at least a little bit underground, right? And there's a few societies that have ended up coming up in the underground, right? As we mentioned before, there was a Nazi-ish group, right? Devoted to stamping out those that are irradiated and stuff like that. You have the communists, which are, as you can guess, communists, and you also have a just like different towns that are in the metro stations, hence the name Metro, that are also all by themselves as well, right? And you also have what is it, Polis? What is actually the Rangers, right?
Pol- the Polis Rangers,
Yeah.
yeah, they're kind of like the group you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're basically like the peacekeepers of their sector and all that. They get more expanded upon in Last Light than they do in the first one. The first one, you're just like, I want to be a ranger, and they're like, you can't be a ranger yet. And you're like, oh, all right. Then you go do some cool stuff, and they're like, okay, you could be a ranger.
That's about right.
Yeah. Actually, one quick thing. So, which ending did you get?
Oh, I got the ending where I nuked everything.
Okay, so you got the canon ending.
I did.
Yes. I actually, when I replayed Last Light a couple of months back,
Okay.
I completely forgot. I actually haven't played 2033 in a long while at this point.
Okay.
Um, but I forgot entirely that the first game had multiple endings. Both games actually have different endings depending on your actions in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like a arbitrary choice really. It's more the actions you do leading up to it,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Last Light, where Last Light has small actions kind of count as points up towards
Mm-hmm.
the eventual like ending,
Mm-hmm.
which ending you get. But yeah, nuking everything is kind of the ending most people get. It's hard to actually get the other ending,
That's for
which
sure.
is well, I guess we'll just talk about the story a little bit of what's actually happening. If you're interested in playing the game, do we both have a recommendation here?
Yeah, full recommendation. Both games. We're going to spoil the shit out of this stuff.
Yeah. So the story of the first game is all about the Dark Ones and how they're these alien-looking race that prowl on the surface and are really threatening and really like kind of a bane to the existence of the Metro, and everyone's like really scared of them. So you're tasked with destroying them all, and you found a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and eventually, depending on your actions in the game, it either leads up to a point of you just dropping basically a nuke on top of their nest, just blowing them to smithereens,
Yep.
or the other ending where you spare them, and your good buddy Khan's really happy. And I like to imagine that ending ends with you getting back and everyone like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you blow them up? And you're like, but they're so nice. And then they're like, no, no, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
They've killed so many people.
Yep. Yeah.
But
There's basically this idea that what they were actually trying to do was just contact and they're basically so incompatible with humans that it does bad things to humans.
Yeah,
That's the gist of it. But
they're a completely different creature.
but if you don't have that knowledge, then you just think they're killing people.
Yeah, they're these big, imposing, scary, like 10-foot tall, black alien-looking monsters
Mm-hmm.
that have these psychic powers, and you're just like, oh no, all right, well, this is certainly going to go badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
and
but the
honestly, in my playthrough of Metro, the first one, I
Mhm.
I would totally nuke them.
Yeah, they don't make a great argument in the first game for them. Like when you do meet them, they're very, very odd encounters, and you kind of like don't get a lot of good feelings towards them. Like most of the game is cramming down your throat, like these guys are dangerous, and there's a small few sections, mainly with Khan, who like is like, no, 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 they're not bad people, and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like there. I couldn't really think of any like positive times you even have. Like literally, I was thinking about this. If any of them had just directly tried, in those in if they had just like tried just like communicating with your character, right? Because for some reason your character isn't as badly affected by them, right? Then
You've got the gift, I guess.
yeah, yeah, that's a little bit more explained in the second game. Then I feel like the whole situation wouldn't even have to go down, you know? Like towards the end, like you're basically having this mental battle with like these beings, and you're trying to fight them off, and like literally, if they're just like, wait, please don't. Instead, they're like, kill him. He must be stopped, kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just saying if it's, I mean, that they're just hostile towards you, and you're just trying to defend yourself and the people around you, and them being around has caused a lot of trouble for humans in the metro. Like it did not give a strong case to helping them in the game itself. And honestly,
Well,
I kind of had thoughts of like, well, okay, they want peace now, but what about 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, or 40 years from now? I can't see this going well in the long term, you know?
well, I guess there's a difference between just talking about Metro 2030 on its own versus Less Light, which expands that greatly.
It very much
Within the
does.
yeah, at least the final thing I guess we'll say about 2033 is at least when you're playing it, you really do get the feeling that these guys are dangerous, or at least they are otherworldly, that you don't want to be near them really.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get a lot of reasons why not to nuke them, other than trusting Khan a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that is a small fault in the storytelling of
But
it.
the good thing is,
But
though, is that Khan is made out to be a very reliable character in the game, right? So this is why
mhm.
him saying this matters, because you get the feeling he's telling the truth, but there's a lot of evidence telling you otherwise. Even though he has been reliable on literally every other thing in the game, right? Like Khan is sort of this mystic sort of character that can like see like spirits in the subways, and kind of like how your character can. And
Mhm.
what's a good way to put it? That is very knowledgeable on how things have played out and have to play out, right? So
Yeah,
he's
like Khan is like that.
mm-hmm. So like you not trusting him on this one thing, it would be like the one odd thing out, because he's been literally right on every other subject that you've encountered within the game, but everything else in the game is telling you that these things have to be destroyed. They have caused nothing but havoc, right? And if you don't listen to Khan, there's very little that's going to convince you to try and save these things. Would you agree?
Yeah, he is kind of the one driving force for them.
Otherwise, you wouldn't even have the feeling that maybe you should try. But I also feel like him being there and saying that is an important force, though, because it does make you real. It does help you, come to more realizations in the second game, which picks up after
Yeah.
the destroyed after the nuking option ending.
Yeah, which moves us nicely on to Metro Last Light, which is the direct sequel to 2033. It's basically set a few years after the ending of 2033, which the canon ending is you blowing up all
exactly
of the Dark
1 year
Ones.
actually.
It is 1 year.
Apparently,
Okay.
they even have a new game coming out this year as well, for the Metro
No,
series.
no, that's actually either a book or something. It's not a game. They came out and corrected that. I was excited too.
Okay, I was wrong.
Yeah. It's good. It's fine. A lot of people were confused by the announcement. They were like, "Wait, there's a new game coming out?" It's like, "No, no, no. Sorry, we didn't. we misspoke." But so Metro Last Light. Metro Last Light is set 1 year after the events of 2033 when you nuke the Dark Ones, and essentially picks up with the Metro not doing so great as always, but worse now more than ever. When your station discovers this vault, this mystery vault of food and munitions and basically stuff to let you survive forever.
Well, it was not your station; it was the Police Rangers.
Right, the Polis Rangers, but you're a part of them now. You've joined them, so yeah. So you've joined the Polis Rangers, and you guys have found out about this.
And this was the same vault, by the way, that you found in the last game.
Right. Yes. I forgot about that. But this becomes quickly an arms race for everyone to get this vault between all the factions of the Metro. That includes your Rangers, the Nazis, the commies. Just everyone within the vault wants this. Everyone within the Metro wants this vault, and it eventually leads up to a war between pretty much a fair amount of people. There's even a scene that I really like, which is actually a peace council, like not a peace council, but like a town hall almost of like everyone getting together and being like, how are we going to do this without murdering each other? But the story has other aspects to it, other than just fighting for this vault. It has you befriending this man Pavel. But what exactly was happening in the story? I forget. It was like you got captured.
Yeah, you got caught. You basically were. You're out in the waste. You're trying to track down a remaining one of the black monsters.
Dark ones.
Yeah, dark ones.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be like a child sort of one. So you end up like just trying to kind of not hurt it kind of deal. At least try not to. You end up getting knocked out by it. And you wake up being captured by the fascists, Nazi guys, right? And apparently a communist of the Red Line guys, they got captured by some of their guys got captured as well, right? So that actually ends up you and this one guy just trying to break out of this Nazi concentration camp kind of deal.
Yeah, and it's almost a literal concentration camp where they're keeping people in cages. They're working them to the bone.
And you start to get the feel of like, what are these guys about? And they're all about, if you have any signs of radiation or any deformities or anything like that, they have to try and keep the lines pure kind of deal. So they were going full into the mantra.
Yeah, exactly, and the game and something with 2033 and Last Light, they don't shy away from these topics at all. It's not like this gets pulled away from at the last minute to be like, oh, you thought it was going to be bad, but no, it's fine. Let's keep having fun. It's like, no, I mean, there's a section of the in Last Light where you escape from this prison, and then you have the option to let these people go or keep them caged up in this concentration camp. Obviously, your life is easier if they get out because the prison break and you can use that to escape with. But also, I mean, you're helping them. But the game gives you the option.
You don't have to do it. You could forget about it and just keep moving on.
Yeah, exactly.
But another thing that this game does is like it tries and makes even your enemies human. That's the thing, right? Like there is no like pure bad guys here. Oh well, there are. Okay, let me restructure that. Not everybody in the communist is bad. Not everybody in the Nazis is bad, right? There's some are just people that got swept up in this whole fervor thing, right? But you also have guys in your group which aren't good, right? Or at least they are very unwilling to
change.
Yes, and those ideas could be destructive, right?
Yeah. Like a perfect example is Pavel, the guy you befriend in the prison. Now, again, we will get into spoilers again. If you're still listening and want to play Last Light specifically for some reason, we're going to spoil the crap out of this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this great scene. I really like this scene. I really like all the scenes where you're in a town.
Mm-hmm.
I really like all of them. But this one in particular is you end up back at, what was it, the art district or something. Like you end up on the commie side, and basically Pavel's like, oh my god, we made it.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually out of like dangerous territory. I'm gonna make a few calls and then we're gonna get you back to the Rangers, and it's gonna be great. So you go through this town, do all this little side things, and you end up meeting back up with Pavel, and Pavel has spiked your drink that he gives you.
And the funny thing is, right, is in the first game, they pointed out that when you drink, it basically does not affect you, right? So in the second game, when you're suddenly sitting down with drinks and you take like one swig of that, and suddenly your character's vision starts to get a little blurry a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's just kind of, you're just kind of thinking, all right, we're just kind of going through with this. And then, like, 2 drinks in, you're like, oh no, I have been tricked. So if you paid attention to it, you would have been like, something's not right with this, right?
See, if you paid attention, you certainly would have gotten that.
Mm.
But after the second drink, 2 big burly guys come out and just stand on your sides. So immediately you're like, this isn't gonna go well. This is not the fun times I expected.
Mm-hmm.
So Pavel betrays you.
Mm-hmm.
He turns you over to the communists and basically intends you for dead.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes off to get word to the troops about this vault and all kinds of other things. And then that's kind of when the story of the Dark One really picks up again.
Well, also, I think yep. And you also have to try and break out of, the communist side now as well. But
of course, yeah, you break out because, I mean, you're the video game protagonist.
That's what happens.
It's what happens.
Now, the interesting thing is, though, right? When you do break out of both from the Nazi guys and the communist guys, is you can do this different ways, right? You can just go on a murder spree and kill every single guy you come across, right? Or you can choose to just knock them out.
Yes.
You can choose to either just kill them, or you can choose to quietly kill them, or you can choose just to knock them out. See, that's an important distinction, right?
Yes, that is something we didn't talk about too much yet, is that the game gives you a fair bit of options for loud, for stealth, for killing your enemies, for not doing that.
Yep, it's actually a pretty big thing in the first one as well. It gives you that option for most of the game as well. At least when dealing with human characters, right?
Yes. Yeah, for the monsters there really isn't a lot you can do there,
yeah.
but
but
But the human characters at the very least are all like you can knock them out. You can honestly avoid some.
mm,
Like you just straight up
I mean, like
walk
if
past some.
your character waits, you could end up hearing like an interesting story from them, or maybe a little bit of their
Oh my
background,
god.
or you could
Uh,
just end up them moving on to their next post, and you don't even have to deal with them anymore. Or
oh my
they
god.
start breaking up into little groups, and you can kind of get them on their own. I mean, like patience is rewarded in this game, and being stealthy actually feels good. Like it actually feels good to be stealthy in this game. That's kind of
Hmm.
what I really liked. Is like for most games where I've tried to be stealthy in, the stealthiness has felt really kind of forced and not fun.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, and I was gonna say I'll share a lot more of my thoughts when we're finished, at least describing Last Light. But absolutely, the stealth of these games and the conversations, the little touches here and there, the conversations people have when they're not shooting at you
mm-hmm,
are what I love the game series about.
mm-hmm,
It brings so much life to what is normally just an empty world. It's just like it just spreads so much about it.
mm-hmm.
It's great.
Like you
It's
can
great.
pick up a lot from side conversations or just kind of mulling around in a town that you have to go through, or you can do like a little side thing here or there. But
Yeah.
it's just something that like really immerses you in this place, right? Like you don't get anything that feels like too forced, or like it doesn't, like you don't get like a vignette of like, hey, this is what's going on kind of deal. It's like no, you can just kind of mull around and see what people are doing kind of on their date, just kind of regularly kind of thing, or just they're on
Mm.
their shift or whatever, you know. You get the feel that you get the feeling that you're fighting people, not just blank soldiers that you
Yeah,
have to murder or not murder.
they're not all standing around seething and waiting for somebody to come around a corner for them to butcher with a knife or to shoot. They're just standing there, and 9 times out of 10, they're on a shift. They're like, oh god, all right, man, what am I gonna do when I get off my shift? All right, maybe I'll go home and drink, or maybe I'll call up that friend of mine,
Mm,
or something like that. And it really makes these people out to be people.
mm-hmm. Or it
Um,
could actually make them to be like inhuman bastards as well. Like there's definitely like,
Absolutely.
especially in Last Light, like you get the feeling like it really brings up points where you're like, I just want to make sure these guys don't hurt people anymore. Like you get that with like the one bandit scene with the one bandit group you come across that just murder people for basically fun and because they can. That
Which one do you mean in particular?
the one where they had attacked this refugee car full of people.
Oh, like you met up with them originally, and then they were like, "Oh, our scouting group went ahead."
Yeah, yeah.
That one. Okay, yeah, that one especially. Um, but
And then
tell you
you
what,
also get the one group of the communist guys that were just torching a town.
yeah. Well, even then, that felt like it was just under orders. Like that didn't feel like they were enjoying it. They didn't weren't standing around like, "Oh yes, I'm so happy it's burning." It's like it's just another order that they're carrying out at
Mm-hmm.
this point. Nobody's sitting there cackling because something's on fire. They're having normal conversations while they're standing in basically a shanty town that is burning to the ground.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but real quick, tell you what. Let's finish describing the game,
Okay.
and then we'll go over things we really like about the game, and at least me, I'll go over things I don't like about the games.
Okay. Cool.
So, basically what happens is after you escape, you the main character, after you escape from the commies, you kind of re-meet up with the Dark One,
Mm-hmm.
and then the game becomes you kind of palling around with the Dark One.
There's a bit more in between that. You meet up with Khan before that. Remember?
Wait, say that again?
You meet back up with Khan actually, and then
Yes,
he
yes.
leads you through this like little bit of a mystical journey through the
Yeah,
sewers.
yeah, and don't worry, I'll get to the mystical journey stuff
Okay.
in a bit. But but I mean, long and short is you get basically brought to the Dark One,
Mm-hmm.
and the Dark One, you befriend it more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically, the Dark One is a child. It's a very young child. Even when it's talking to you telepathically, it sounds like a child,
Mm-hmm.
and it basically doesn't know what the world is yet.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't know a lot about what's going on and all that. It just knows that people are angry at it and it needs to survive, and it's one of the last of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the game from there is you basically racing to the vault to stop Pavel and the other communists that are working with him
Mm-hmm.
to basically betray everyone in the metro and take it right out from underneath of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You're like the one guy who knows the truth, and you're racing back there trying to stop it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the game eventually you make your way there, and the game is promising you this whole game of an all-out war scenario. And at least in my opinion, it delivers.
It very much
it
does.
Yeah, it absolutely delivers at the end, where pretty much you get to the vault. The Dark One actually at this point has gone off on its own
Mm-hmm.
because it's found that its people still exist
Well,
in this other
well,
vault, more or
actually,
less.
before that happens, you actually end up meeting back up with Pavel. He has like a
Yes.
bunch of
Oh
soldiers
yes.
that were searching for you, and you've been trying to either sneak by them or like knock them out or whatever. He eventually ambushes you, like in this whole open courtyard kind of deal with the building around it,
Hmm.
and you end up fighting off a bunch of his guys, right? And you actually finally defeat the guy, but you get the choice to either just let the dude go or to just outright murder him because he's wounded and he's just kind of like hurt on the floor at the end. You've already done your damage to him.
You've shot him a couple of times. Yeah, you've shot him a couple of times at this point, and he really is just hurting.
Hmm. And it gives you the option to either just kill this guy or knock him out or what are you going to do with him kind of deal. And,
Yeah, it gives you the option where it's actually done this before. There was another character it gave you with where you could choose
it was actually a traitor
what to do.
that had had basically given a what was it like like some sort of chemical virus or whatever to the
Hmm.
communist guys that actually let's explain that real quick where they actually tested it on that one town where they were burning everything, right? They're burning it because like there was a virus there and all that kind of stuff. um, but yeah, you had the choice of either just outright murdering that guy or get just knocking the guy out. I mean, are you just going to kill this guy, or are you just kind of going to go on and forget it?
Yeah, and this is actually a good introduction to why you would want to kill them and why you wouldn't want to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the game, like 2033, the game has alternate endings, two endings basically.
Mm-hmm.
One is a good ending, one is a bad ending.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you get these endings is through basically karma points. You do good things in the metro, it gives you good points towards the good ending. You do bad things, you don't get points towards the good
Mm-hmm.
ending, more or less. You might even lose points. It's a little vague how the system works exactly, but more or less, you want to do good things if you want the good ending.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hinted at you the entire game doing these good things by little flashes of light that happen when you do a good thing, like when you play a guitar or help someone in a town. It's like, oh, a little flash of light, and that's like your hint. That's like, ooh, you did a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is when you're traveling to the vault, when you're traveling back after everything, you're traveling with the Dark One, and the Dark One, the entire way is kind of talking to you and like trying to get a lay of the land and like what is the world like now? Because he doesn't know a lot about
Mhm.
it.
And
And
basic
what your
basically, yeah, what you're doing is deciding is what is he going to pick up from what you're doing, kind of deal.
exactly. So, for instance, like the guy who gassed an entire town, you personally might feel really strongly about killing him. You might say like, "Oh, this guy really shouldn't be alive. He's straight evil." But you have to think
Well, you also get the feeling that like he didn't necessarily want to get that town gassed.
exactly. That was something else I was going to mention was that these characters also have another side to them as well, where you're sitting there and saying they're not just straight evil, but on top of that, the Dark One, when you choose to kill these characters or not, is standing right next to you as you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he comments on whatever you do. So if you kill this guy, you teach him revenge is the best way to deal with this. Or if you spare him, forgiveness is the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more evident than ever than with Pavel, where Pavel I felt was a much more gray choice
Mm-hmm.
than the gas guy. Gas guy, honestly, I still feel okay with killing him. He's kind of a monster, but that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
um, Pavel, especially, you get to the point where you have to choose to save him or kill him. Kill him, but the entire time I'm standing there, I'm like, I understand that the right thing to do is to save him,
Mm-hmm.
but
I mean, like
he's been kind of a
you also
dick.
get the feeling that this guy he's just doing what he thought was right, right? Like Pavel never comes off as somebody that's doing anything for evil, right? That's that's the one thing. Linetsky,
He
which was the traitor guy, you kind of get
yeah.
the feeling that he was just trying to do something for his best interest, kind of deal, and he didn't
Mm-hmm.
exactly like how what happened. And for Pavel, right, you get the feeling that he is just doing what he thinks is the right thing to do, right?
It aligns with his morals and his belief in the commie cause.
He believes that his organization is doing the right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And that's why it's even a choice, right? That's why it actually feels like a choice. Like you can make arguments for killing this guy because of what he supported, or you could save him because, you know, it's not really his decision for supporting it. He just believes in the cause, kind of thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's other things where it's you kind of feel bad for Pavel at the end of
Mhm.
it,
And
where he's just dying and he's spouting off the whole Three Musketeers stuff that he's been doing, and he really doesn't seem like he wanted to betray you.
mhm,
It just kind of had to happen.
mhm,
It there's a lot of sides to it, and honestly, the choices you make in the game, there really isn't like you did a bad thing or you did a good thing,
mhm,
because both endings of the game kind of are satisfying to a degree,
mhm.
almost. I definitely think the good ending's more satisfying, but real quick before I go over the endings, what ending did you get?
I got the one where where the black ones come and save you at the
Okay,
end.
so you didn't blow up. More or less to describe the endings. The bad ending, the ending you get if you didn't do enough good stuff, is that the Nazis overrun
Well, no, no,
your
it wasn't the
party.
Nazis. It was the communists.
Was it the
Hmm.
communists? Yeah, sorry, it was the communists. My bad.
Yeah.
Well,
By the way,
yeah, it was.
there was this huge, big battle sequence where they threw trains at you, and it was an
it's
experience.
it's really intense. They give you basically the best weapons you can get. There's just endless waves of these guys. There's guys in basically metal suits. It's great,
It's a
but
pretty nice climax.
but but essentially you get overrun.
Hmm.
The long story short is, no matter the ending, you get overrun, and a lot of your troops are just killed immediately. But you're not dead yet, and before all this, your head commander basically prepped the vault to explode if things went entirely badly. Like, if they can't have it, no one will. And in the bad ending, the commie leader kind of is walking around being all evil and being like, oh, sorry, you guys lost. And then in the bad ending, you're able to grab the switch and flip it and basically blow the entire vault and all of the commies and I think a lot of people like Nazis and Rangers just blow everyone up so no one can have it. And you turn into kind of a legend of saving the Metro from the commies rising to power almost. You become a legend. The Dark Ones kind of go off on their own. They're never heard from again really. But you are dead at the end of that ending. The good ending, the ending that Anthony got, was the ending where basically the Dark Ones stop you right before you pull that switch to blow everything up. The little child one stops you and he's like, no, we've got this. Which leads to this cool cutscene of basically the Dark Ones telekinetically stopping everyone from doing anything. And disarming everyone and trying to make peace and all that. And you survive this ending, same with the Dark One and everything. Similar events happen, the Dark Ones go off on their own, but you're still alive. It's... Both endings do feel somewhat fulfilling, but of course the good ending feels a little better. Like, it felt like you did something right.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Definitely. But, alright. So, let's talk about what we liked and what we didn't.
Okay.
Because I feel like I've got stuff.
Alrighty. I'm going to be honest here.
Tell you what.
What's up?
Oh, you finish your thought.
I'm going to be honest here. I see mostly positives in this game. I mean, like, again, I kind of wish there was more to it, right? But, again, if it stayed too long, it would have overstayed its welcome kind of deal, you know?
Yeah,
like, I feel like the
absolutely.
most promise in this game, was just how narratively it flowed nicely, right? Like, you never felt like the game was going too slow or too fast. It just kind of went at a good, even pace and accelerated where it needed to and slowed down where it needed to, you know?
Yeah, the pacing of the games, both of them are really solid. Especially the first one. I remember playing the first one originally and just blowing through it and being like, wow, I don't think that ever slowed down for me, really. Like, I remember just playing through it and being at the end like, wow, I'm at the ending. All right. Well, all right. So you don't really have any even minor nitpicks about the game?
Honestly, for me, the mechanics are virtually the same for both games, but that's okay because they were good mechanics, right?
Yes.
Like, you can kind of nitpick at like the at like doing good and that little thing, but even that didn't feel forced to me, right? Like, I just played like how it naturally felt, and I got the ending that I did, and that felt right. Like, I don't even have gripes with that because it didn't feel like it was overbearing or anything like that. Like, the shooting mechanics in the game were very responsive, and if you used the gun, you felt like you knew how it was going to be used. I mean, I scrounged every bit of ammo I can, so I kind of had a surplus of ammunition towards the end of the game. I was expecting to have to use up a lot more than I did.
Especially Last Light. I remember in 2033 it was a bit more stringent, where at the end of the game I was making actual choices of like what I can afford versus what I want. While Last Light, by the end of it, I was just loaded with money and bullets, and I was just never ran out of anything. But, alright, so tell you what, I'm going to go down a few things that I don't like, and then I'll go over things I really do like about the games.
Sure.
So, I'm going to warn you up front. Well, real quick, what do you think is your favorite game of both of them?
So, I'm going to be honest here. I played these back to back, like, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of feel like the same game, to be honest. Like I played
I'm
them.
here to cop out.
Um,
I'm here to cop out.
Fine, Last Light then, just because it was a little bit longer, and I
Okay.
got to
All
enjoy
right.
it more.
All right. That's fine. I'm definitely not like grilling you too much. I'm just like, you know what? It's fine. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
seriously, if you said both of them are equally as good, I would have accepted that as an answer.
like I do kind of see them both as just as good, to be honest, because I didn't really get bad feelings out of either of them. You
Mm.
know what? You know what? I have a feeling I know what your nitpick's going to be. Is it? Is it?
Okay. All
Is
right.
it? Is it the
Please.
river? The river of truth?
No, actually, no. Actually, that's actually one of my like better parts.
Okay.
I really like
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay.
I that's actually on not that specifically, but that's on my list of things I like about the game, which is really scary, creepy moments about this
Mm-hmm.
game. But let me go over the bad
All
stuff
right.
so we end on a good note.
Okay.
So we end on the stuff I
And
do
I'm going to
like.
stop being wrong, guessing at what I think you think.
Hey, if you have any guesses,
I don't
please
know,
try.
Drew. Every time I've taken a guess so far in this podcast we've been doing, I've been wrong at least 80% of the time.
I'm unpredictable. I'm a wild card. But all right, so I'm gonna warn you up front.
Okay.
I'm the same way, where I consider both games really good. If I had to pick, I would probably pick 2033 over Last Light. But it is such a narrow margin that it's not fair to say like, oh yeah, definitely 2033. It's like it's just barely eking out past it.
Okay.
But only because the problems I have with the series are the biggest in Last Light.
Okay.
So, overall, between both games, glitches and bugs. This game is littered with them. There's so
Is
much.
it?
It is. I've come across so many times of
Okay,
like
so here's the thing. I played the Redux version, so
that. That is actually true. I didn't think about that. Was that you might have played a version of the game that is better than what I played, which I played the original versions, while you played the remasters of them.
I did, and I did not encounter a single bug the entire
Well,
playthrough.
tell you what. Let me run through a few things I run off the top of my
Okay.
head. Did you ever shoot a light and nobody noticed in Last Light?
Oh, I thought that was that. I thought that was just part of the gameplay.
Well, I think it is, but the problem is like in the first game, glass was such a big deal. Like if you stepped on glass or glass kind of crinkled, people would hear
Did
you.
it?
While in this game, a whole like basically tube light breaks and shatters, and people are like, it's fine.
I I
The fuse just blew or whatever.
I genuinely don't remember that.
Hmm.
I didn't have any
Well,
issues like that.
another big thing I have with both the games is that they feel a little tight. I guess is the right word for it.
What do you mean by
It does and not tight like in like, oh, it feels really good to play, but like when you walk it feels a little off or something like that. It just doesn't feel as good as it could. And Last Light improved a lot of that. I'm mainly talking about 2033. 2033 has a good bit of issues, but Last Light still has some of them.
I genuinely didn't find any issues like that. The only time that I felt like movement was weird when I was trying to run away from an enemy.
Yeah,
That's the only time I felt
that
movement was weird. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty spot on.
yeah, that's definitely one. But all right, well, tell you what, I'll just leave it at that then, because I experienced it, but maybe in the Redux version it is fixed, so maybe that's a moot point.
Okay.
But another thing I have,
Okay.
and this is more on the Last Light side.
Okay.
Bosses. I really didn't like the idea of a boss fight in Metro. I don't really remember if any of them were in 2033. I don't think there was. I think there was maybe one you did. But in Last Light, there definitely are boss fight moments where it blocks you in and says, you need to kill this thing before you can move on.
That's true.
Where the parts of Metro I really like are the stealth aspects and the creative ways you can go around it, as opposed to just fire your gun like a madman at this thing until it goes down.
You're right. You're right. I know what you're talking about. I think there were three instances, right? There was the bear towards the end. There was
Mm-hmm.
the what was it? It was
The swamp
the swamp
monster.
monster, and then there was the thing in the
Mm-hmm.
catacombs.
Yes, it. There are three. There are three of them, as far as I remember. There might be a
No,
fourth,
there's just three.
but they're all monsters, which makes sense why you can't creatively take care of them. But at the same time, it's like weird that like
It was building. It was
they
building them up. It was building them up, though. That's the thing.
oh they were built up well bosses.
Hmm.
They were decent bosses. It's just for the type of game Metro is, I don't think it needs them. I don't think it needs boss fights at all. Especially the way that they're trying to make you feel in the game, where ammo's really precious,
Hmm.
really scarce. I even think like if they had gotten rid of the bosses, they might have been able to give you less ammo in the game and make it even more scarce.
It
But
felt
at
I don't
some points,
know.
they kind of had to build you up.
I don't know. It felt pretty appropriate for me because, see, the librarians in the first game, right, taught me that I needed to have ammo for when I met something big, and librarians were something I was
Yes.
expecting as as that something big, right? So when I
Hmm.
finally got to that first boss monster, right, I was like, okay, okay, this thing's not going down easy. This is probably going to be like a boss thing, right? Where you pretty much just had to make sure you were prepared for that. You didn't waste your ammo on shooting pointless things. You just weren't expending it like crazy. So if you conserved, in a good way, you should have had enough to fight those things, right?
Yeah, and I'm not arguing the point of like, did I have enough ammo to fight them, or did I use my ammo sparingly enough? It's the fact that it forces you to use that ammo.
I feel like you have to be forced though every once in a while because if you're not forced, then I mean, why do you have the ammo? You got to use your toys.
That is true, but the entire game is makes you so stringent on it. And I guess my point is, if the bosses weren't there, that would leave more opportunity for them to be more stringent and get that feel I really had in 2033, which was just like I'm out of bullets again, time to get a new weapon or something.
I guess.
Like it 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 felt odd. I guess that's the best way I could put it, is that bosses in Last Light just felt weird to me.
I mean, there was still technically a boss in the first one, but it was more
Yeah,
like a series of mini bosses of the librarians, really.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like it didn't feel as much of a boss fight, where in Last Light you can clearly see when it ropes you into an area and you can't leave it, and you just know you have to kill this thing. Like especially the catacombs boss. The I think it was like a gorilla or something.
Hmm.
It was just like it locks you in there, and then it summons little guys to come help and kill you, and
Hmm. I mean,
it
I did
felt weird from the rest of the game.
it was different from like the rest of the game, but it's not wholly different because there's always points in the game where you have to fight things, or you're not going to move
Yeah,
forward. And I feel like these things being in there sell the world more, right? Because they sell the world in the fact that there is literally just monsters out there that can rip you to shreds. You are not the top of this food chain. This thing is, or that thing is, or whatever.
that
Right? Like you really have to scrape by to kill this thing. You're going to be expending a lot of your arsenal on this.
but there's so many good moments where they don't have to.
Well, you're right.
Like for example, the demon fight.
Hmm.
The moment where you climb on top of a building and there's a demon up there, essentially a bird,
Yeah.
a giant bird. A giant bird is on top of the building, and it starts attacking you. If you kill that, it's like nothing. You killed it, and that's it. And I think the dark one that's coming with you is like, oh, I think it was protecting its babies.
Hmm.
You didn't have to kill it. It found an entire way around it where it was just like, no, you don't have to.
Hmm.
And that I feel like that's more within the Metro world than just, well, I guess I have to shoot it a lot.
Yeah, but you're always going to get in these situations where you're not going to be able to back out of things easily. You're kind of trapped. You have to brute force your way through it. You can't always have the stealthy option, right? Like you can only do the stealthy option works where it works, but you're not. That's not always going to be the option. And I feel like in a game, if you expect every chance to have that option, then it's not going to feel right either, right? Like
Well, I'm not.
you having those spots where you can't sneak around, right? Where it's like, okay, you kind of have to brute force this. Is
Yeah,
a changing of pace, in which I think is important. Because like you're always going to have these points where you're going to be sneaking through, and but you're also going to have these points where you're going to be fighting through. Because if you were sneaking through the entire game, it's not. I would get bored of that mechanic very after a while, right? Like what these boss fights allow is a change up in the pace, which you don't always get in all the parts of the game.
I I agree with you somewhat, but at the same time, I don't agree with the implementation in the game.
Okay,
I guess that might be my problem is how they were implemented, where it felt extremely boss fighty,
I
where it felt like it put you in an arena and said you need to fight this thing, as opposed to doing it in a more Metro way, where like maybe, for instance, a boss fight could have been when you were on that train car and all those things were going overhead of you.
mhm.
Like you could be chased by a giant one behind you or something like that. I feel like there's better ways to do it, and the game just kind of opted for a basic
I,
structure of here's the bad guy, shoot him a lot.
I don't really see an issue with it though, to be honest. I feel like it thematically works. Like
I
it
guess.
doesn't really break the metro structure of there being like these creatures that you can't get around, right?
Yeah,
There's definitely
and
doom and gloom out there, and those are your doom and gloom.
universe wise it makes sense. Like there's all this dangerous stuff out there that can kill you at a moment's notice and you're going to have to fight.
Mm.
It I guess it's just the implementation. I don't know.
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, it kind of did. Um all right, well, I'm gonna breeze through a couple. I'm gonna breeze through basically this last big problem. I don't even want to call it a big problem. It's really a nitpick,
Hmm.
but it's so noticeable at last light
Okay.
that I just have to mention
All
it.
right.
So I think Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light do an incredible job at pacing,
Okay.
except one moment in Last Light:
What's that?
titties. That is such a weird moment in the middle of a really tense section.
You're right. It is. It is just kind of out of nowhere. Random
So,
love love.
for the uninitiated, real quick, in Metro Last Light, you finally get to the point where you're hunting Pavel back down. You finally find out where he is, and you're kind of stealthily following him and trying to find out what he's up to before trying to like get your revenge or just trying to get to him or something like that. And you finally find the room he's in, and he's in this strip bar,
Hmm.
and he's in this back room where basically he's like, "Oh,
Oh
we
no
have to
no!
talk
This
about
this place
business
is
away
actually
from
a straight
people."
up brothel.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. But I mean, it's got stripper poles and everything. So same similar idea. But anyway, they go to the back room, and then you follow them to this back room, and you sit like outside the door and you listen to them, and then they start to leave. So you back out and quickly go into like a side room that's like, okay, I'm gonna hide here until they pass by. And then while you're in this room, this girl is just in it.
Yep.
Who is like, "What are you doing?" And then you just kind of like put your hand over her mouth and like silence her, and you're like, "Shh, don't say a word." And she seems kind of freaked out by this.
Hmm.
And then Pavel walks by, and then instead of chasing the man who just dicked you over,
Yeah. You wanna pay for a
she
lap
she
dance.
she offers you a lap dance, and it's like, this is really weird.
Yeah.
This is really weird. I can understand before this doing it,
Hmm.
like if while you're following him, or
Hmm.
maybe while you're trying to blend in. But right there
Yeah, it felt
is
it
such a
felt
weird moment.
very out of. This feels like so for those who don't know, this is also a series of books, right? I
Yes.
feel like this was a story point in the books that they just had to get through, and it just feels very, very weird in a game. Like,
It felt like something that like somebody said they needed in the game and
mhm.
they didn't know where else to put it.
Yeah,
So they put it right
yeah.
there.
It just
And
you get the option to just like pay these bullets that you've been saving up as currency to just get a lap dance and all that stuff. It's like what is this? What is this?
yeah, it was one of those moments that really stuck out to me
Mhm.
where I just sat there. I'm like, this is really odd placement.
Yeah, it just feels weird to have it there. And the second Titty Mark Two,
Yeah.
where you're suddenly where you escape the place that was like being burned down and all that kind of stuff, and you actually
Oh yeah, I forgot all
yeah you're
about
actually
this.
rescuing a teammate and all that stuff, right? Who who accidentally left you for dead at the beginning of the mission, beginning of the game, right when you got originally captured.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so you end up rescuing them, and they're like, and you're in isolation with them, making sure you don't have the disease or whatever. And they're like, I want to feel like I've lived. And then suddenly her top comes off, and like, you do it. Yeah, that felt out of place too. I was like, what is this? What's
I will argue it's not as out of
Oh,
place
it's
as the
not
other one, but it
as out of
certainly
pace.
was
I'll
one
give
of
you
those
that,
moments
right? But it was
where
still like, oh, we were like this. Oh, I didn't realize we were even this close.
yeah, it felt like one of those like, here we're gonna make you care about this character kind of thing,
Hmm.
and it's the only reason they could do a kid at the ending. It's like, oh, you had a kid with her name was Anna, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it was Anna. Yeah, yeah. You had a kid with Anna because of that one night. Otherwise, it'd be really weird just to be like, oh, you had a kid with Anna after you blew up. It's like, oh, I don't know how events connect here.
Hmm.
So I feel like that more than anything was a story plot point that kind of got jumbled in,
It did. It felt
where it
like
was like,
something that like there was probably more to this in the book, right? But it
mm,
just didn't translate well to the game.
right,
Like it feels like
yeah,
really out of place. You didn't like you felt like things were building up between them, but like it was never like, whew, man, these guys they's a couple, or like even remotely close that way.
yeah. At the beginning of the game, honestly, she's berating you and like making fun of you and talking about how bad you are at things.
Mm.
And then by the end, she's like, "Oh, I didn't realize how much of a man you are." It's like, I don't know. I don't believe this entirely.
Yeah, like it seems like it doesn't. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Okay, you got me to have a gripe about the game. Good job, Drew.
Ooh. Now let's talk about good
I
stuff.
mean, we kind of
I'm
did,
gonna kind of.
didn't we?
We did, but I want to bring up some like probably two specific things.
Alright.
Um, I love the implementation of the gas masks in these games, like the breathers.
Yeah, that's true.
That is such a nice touch to the
Yeah,
surface.
like it makes you genuinely feel like the surface is hostile to you.
Yeah, because if you were just walking out on the surface with unlimited air and had no problem getting from place to place, that certainly wouldn't bring as much threat as you constantly looking at your watch and saying, okay, like, all right, I need to trade out soon. I need to think about how much air I have left and all that. There was actually a point when I replayed the game. It's the first point you meet Pavel and you're on the surface,
Hmm.
where you run down to the metro and like you're banging on the door, like, "Hey, let us in! Like we're gonna get eaten alive if you don't." I actually ran out of rebreathers there, and I had to restart the whole chapter because I had missed a bunch. So I was like, oh wow, all right, yeah, like I this actually is terrible because like I got to the bottom of those stairs and I was just gasping for air. I'm like, this is stressful. This is really stressful. But that's the entire point is like to keep your mind on you just can't stay up here forever.
hmm
You need to get back under. You need to finish what you're doing and get back underground.
hmm Like it
I
very
really
much
like that
sells the whole
implementation.
like yeah we actually can't leave these metros. Like the only safe air is down there because it's not as irradiated and all that kind of stuff or whatever.
Right. It's world building done really, really well. And there's a lot of world building in this game. I
hmm
mentioned earlier towns in general. I love. There's a short little story in there that I love where you're walking through this one fish town and you come across this little kid who's lost his teddy bear.
hmm
And the kid's like, "Oh, where could my teddy bear be?" And you as a character don't go up and promise to get his teddy bear back. It's not like a quest markers over his head or
hmm
anything. The kid's just like, "I miss my teddy bear," and the mom's like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. We're living in an apocalypse. Teddy bears aren't easy to come by."
hmm And it's like mentioned
Um,
that like I kind of lost it at the shooting range. You're like, okay, yeah, you know what? I'll go finish out the
yeah,
shooting range kind of deal. You end up
yeah. So you go over.
you end up going over to the shooting range, winning a few rounds, and you get it as a prize, right?
Yeah, and it's a neat little story because there's so many things you can pull from it.
hmm
Like you can pull like, oh, I wonder if the shooting range guy like knew that this kid lost it or something like that, or if he just saw it and was like, someone will like this.
hmm
And on top of that, like the idea that just like you in your travels after almost getting murdered
hmm
a lot of times, just heard this kid saying like he lost his toy and you were a good enough person to go do this thing to just get it back for him. It's a nice little moment
hmm
in a game full of these little moments that just work really, really
That's
well.
for sure.
Like I really like it. Um and last thing I want to talk about. This game is terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
I
There was
I
there
don't
were so many
I don't
points.
play Yeah, I don't play many games that scare me.
hmm
Honestly, it is surprising when a game does genuinely bother me.
hmm
Metro gets me so many times that I'm impressed.
And it's not cheap stuff either. That they pull. They.
No, like my favorite scare in the whole of Last Light
hmm
is, well, okay, I guess it's a tie for the entire city of dead people.
hmm
And the one side path you go down during the minecart part.
hmm
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah. When it's just like this whole room filled with beds and all that, right?
Yeah, so just a quick thing for the audience. Basically, you're on this minecart ride going to this objective,
hmm
and you could stop to go in these side rooms for like money or guns or whatever. So you stop in one of these rooms and you go in, and it's completely empty. It's silent. Nothing's in there, and you see just beds all over, like it's a sick ward or something like that.
And you suddenly
And
start hearing this light whispering and weeping and
yeah, you hear whispering, you hear like noises in the background, and you continue on. Like you're sitting there and you're like, okay, this is creepy, but like it looks like there's something at the end of this way. So you go and grab your stuff, the stuff at the end
and
of
you
it,
keep
and then you
and you
turn
keep
around.
well you keep seeing on the side of your vision these black shapes just all
No, no,
around
no,
you
not
too.
no, 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 not yet, not yet.
You're playing a
That
different
that
game than
does
me.
well, maybe like they're on the walls or like off to the side, but like once you pick up this loot, you turn around and the room is filled with these shadow figures.
Mhm,
And there's people lying in beds, there's people standing nearby you, there's people hanging from the ceiling, and they're all just shadows.
mhm,
And if you shine your light at them, you can't see them anymore.
mhm,
But in the darkness outside of your cone of flashlight are these shadow people.
mhm.
That got me so hard. That got me so badly when I saw it. I'm like, oh god, all right, I'm getting out of this
Yeah,
room. I'm getting out. I'm getting out.
I that's actually I agree that genuinely had me fearful. And how many games can do that?
Really, it like I remember seeing that and the dead city towards the end, right before you meet
Hmm.
Pavel again. That is just so
Like
creepy.
both times, nothing really tries to hurt you, but
No, and that's the thing. There's nothing in there other than the real enemies you can see with or without your
mhm,
flashlight that can hurt you. All these shadow things just stand around and
you just get the feeling
move
like
slightly.
they can hurt you, right?
Yeah, I
Because
mean, Khan talks a lot about these
yeah, because
things.
it's been mentioned before in the game that these things have the chance. You cannot do anything to these things, and it's been shown in
Hmm.
different parts of the game that they can actually stop you at points, right? At least in the first Metro game, right?
Yes.
So you can't actually affect these things. You can't do anything to them, but they could possibly do something to you, and you don't know what that is. So it makes it completely terrifying going by these things. So when I was playing it, right, you could actually see the black figures in the Redux version or whatever. Okay,
Hmm.
like just the same way, right? Just out of the cone of your initial vision, right? And when you pick up that loot, they actually half materialize with their faces. Okay.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. You could see the outlines on the shadow
Mm-hmm.
figures, but like I certainly couldn't see a face.
Yeah, like they actually rematerialize a little bit, and it had me absolutely freaked out. And I was just trying to get out of that room as quick as possible. Like you couldn't.
Seriously, like
Like damn,
like I
full
like
fear.
I remember that moment, and that moment is just terrifying. And if you have a thing about spiders, this game might not be a good recommendation for you.
Yeah, that's for
There are
sure.
some terrifying spiders in this game.
Terrifying.
But
Um,
long story short, I really like both games a lot.
mhm. You know what? You know what moment completely sold me about this game
Hmm?
was when you were in one of the towns, right? And you just happened to be passing by, like a bunch of kids being told a story, right? It wasn't even a
Hmm.
story actually. It was just this guy doing like shadow puppets, right? And he was doing the
Hmm.
bird flying into the sky one, right? And he was
Oh, I
like,
know what you're
do
talking
you
about.
children know which one this is?" And they're like, "It's one of the demons," right? Which are the only flying things those kids would have ever seen. They don't even know what
Mm.
birds are, right? Because they've never seen them. It just like sold just like what type of world this is. It took.
The towns really do have that,
Mm,
where all the little conversations that are going on and
mm,
all the little moments here and there are just perfect world building. You sit there and you're like, I have a full feeling as to what this world is and why it feels so terrible. Like, there's so many good moments like that. I can't even name them.
mm.
Just, I wouldn't even want to. Like, whether you want to play this game or not,
I mean, we've spoiled so
I
much,
would
but
say
like
this.
experiencing it is still good.
It's it's different than saying.
That's for sure. Like, if you ever
Like,
wanted to make an argument that games are art, this is one of the games.
yeah, just not even like that's the funny part. Like, not even the shooty bang bang parts.
Yeah,
Everything other than the shooty bang bang
is
parts.
just as good. And the thing is, even those parts, they feel like you're desperately scraping by just to have as much as you can, right? Like you always feel
Mm.
this sort of desperation when you're trying to fight in this game. You're always got this feeling of like dread kind of, going over you, and it just feels good, right? That's the right word, maybe.
I mean, you certainly never feel good in this game, but you feel immersed.
Mm-hmm.
You feel immersed in the game and how it plays and everything. It's good. It's very good.
Dear.
I'm surprised it's not a bigger series than it
Mhm.
is.
Well, they have the third book finally coming out, so.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the next one it'll become a bigger hit than it was.
Mm-hmm.
Last Light did okay, but certainly was not one of the biggest games that year.
That's for sure. That's for sure. But man, we talked about that for a while.
Yeah, really. That, but I mean, I love Metro, so I'm certainly not going to turn down an opportunity to talk
Yeah,
about it.
we're this may just be the Metrocast.
It, I mean, if the title is not something about Metro, like last night or 2033 or something. I would be surprised.
Yeah. I think there's
But
only one more thing I really wanted to talk about today.
go on ahead.
Um, Besides Metro being the awesome game that it is, something did actually happen over the last week that I found a little sad.
Hmm.
Uh, Drew, are you familiar with SourceFed?
Yes, yes, I am.
Yeah, they had their last episode last week.
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of context for people. So SourceFed was a news channel on YouTube that had different hosts and different personalities to kind of come on and basically talk about the news in a short form.
Hmm.
Like they would talk about some news story that happened for 2 to 5 minutes or something like that, and it was more about uh, giving you an idea about the news story itself rather than giving you an opinion on it.
Hmm.
While they did give plenty of opinions, it was more just them trying to talk about the story itself
Hmm.
a lot of the time.
Yep, they were.
Here's the thing.
Yes.
Hmm? I was going to say, real quick, here's the thing though. I have not kept up with them at all. Like, I watched when it first kind of started and really liked the initial personalities of Joe,
Hmm.
um, Lee Newton,
Hmm.
and
Elliot and them.
Elliot, yeah, that's the guy I'm remembering. But and Steve and all that. Like I really like the initial
Hmm.
personalities, and as people left and people came on, I just fell out of it and got my news from other
Hmm.
places. And I honestly, when they announced that SourceFed was closing, I didn't even know. Like I didn't even know who was still on it.
Hmm.
Like the only two people I recognized at that point were Steve Zaragoza and William Hayes. And I don't even think he was on there anymore. I think he had his own thing.
Hmm. Yeah, here's the thing, right? Like, I really did enjoy that show when it first came out, right? But it
Hmm.
definitely got to the point where it was not the same anymore, right? Like that happened a while before this last episode happened. Like there became a point in the show, right, where it became less about actually reporting news, which is what it originally was. What it originally was a show that actually reported news, but in a fun and
Hmm.
interesting way, right? It would be like, hey, this is what's going on with this, and this may actually, relate to you, and that kind of thing. But eventually, right, with all the hosts like shifting out and stuff like that, it got to more of like a stand-up kind of joke kind of format that may or may not have interesting news. See,
Hmm.
that's the thing. Like after a while, SourceFed stopped, well, being interesting. They just kind of really tried to just have like good personalities, try and sell, I guess, their jokes about maybe not interesting things.
Hmm.
Like, but in the past, you would have gotten something about like environmental reform was maybe going on or something like that, right? And like in more recent SourceFed episodes, it would just be some stupid jab at like some celebrity or something like that. Like the quality of content had definitely shifted over time.
Hmm.
It just wasn't the same as it was when it first started, and it's sad that the show ended, but it was no longer the same thing it started out as, and that had changed a long time ago. It's just kind of sad, you know.
Yeah, I'm sad to see it go because obviously it's not the same as it used to be, and it's changed quite a bit.
Hmm.
But it sounds like the situation around it wasn't pleasant.
Hmm.
Like, however they got canceled, it didn't sound like it was the uh, what's the word, like most foretelling thing.
Hmm.
Like they just kind of found out one day, and I mean, it still had an audience.
Hmm.
The channel still had an audience, even though there's people like us who just didn't care much for it after
Hmm.
the initial run.
I mean, like, yeah, people definitely
We
liked it still.
Yeah, there's still plenty of people who are very interested in the in its content and everything like that. And honestly, it's kind of sad because I remember when I heard the announcement, I thought, man, that sucks. But I don't really watch anyone that's on there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing now?
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, you can't find a lot of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not doing things, at least not in like
YouTube
the
space.
in the YouTube space. Yeah, like I know Trisha Hirschberger went to The Escapist, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Meg Turney does her own thing now on Twitch. Joe Beretta, I don't even know what he does
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Elliot Morgan, I think, is trying to do stand up.
Mm-hmm.
Lee Newton, I don't even
I
know.
think Lee Newton and Elliot are actually doing their own show with each other.
No, cool,
I forget what it is, but they are doing something on their own. But it's
nice.
definitely the case where like the original cast, like they went off and did better things, though. And I mean, and just who picked up afterwards just didn't give the same energy, the same fire. I mean, not that it was bad, it's just that it was different. It wasn't what a lot of the people that originally liked it were going for. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just sucked because I looked them up. I couldn't find anyone. I couldn't find at least anyone still doing stuff
Mm-hmm.
actively on YouTube. I'm sure they're doing stuff in some regard, but it wasn't like the content that I'd grown to like from them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of I mean, like, the characters, I feel, the people that had picked up the show, I felt would have done okay if it was a different show, right? Like, they just, at least I felt they didn't live up to the source fed name kind of deal. Like, they just took the show in a different direction. They took
yeah,
the
and
lighthearted take on the news to, like, this is just a joke and we're all just a joke here. That's kind of where it went.
they leaned too heavily on the comedy.
Yeah, instead of the actually let's get information out there side, which very much
Yeah,
took me away from it.
certainly one of those things that like I said, I haven't watched in forever. The people who were still on the show that I knew and liked were two two people. So at that point, that point, I'll just wait till to see what else they can do.
That's for sure. But yeah,
Hmm.
do you have any other thoughts on that? Or I mean, that's kind of all I had. It was just kind of a shame that it's weird to see in a show that you've watched for so long to just finally die.
Yeah, I feel like this is a bigger topic I'd like to bring up at another
Mm,
time. But certainly, what like content creators on the internet that we miss their content. Like, I don't know if this has ever happened to you before, but this certainly happened to me before where just content creators have gone away and because of the nature of the internet, you just can't find their stuff anymore or they just haven't done anything else in this
don't
space.
worry, it's in our list. Dead content.
I don't worry, I've already added it, but regardless, I think that's a topic for another time.
All right. Well, I feel like we did good here today, Drew.
Hmm.
I feel like
I feel
I,
so. I feel like the Metrocast is doing really
yeah.
well.
Like darn, I did not expect us to talk that long about that. That was amazing. Well, anyway, folks, we thank you for being here and being here for the Metro and for the Source Fed and all the other fun. Good night, folks. May the road rise up to meet you and be Irish, I guess.
See ya.
Meow.